Bixby here at Destination Destiny. I'd like to introduce Patricia Danaher of the Jizo Foundation. Patricia, we're going to dedicate the Jizo statue today, so I'm going to allow Patricia to explain to you what we're doing with it.
Thank you all for coming today. It's a great honor to be unveiling this first large, full-size Jizo statue in the West. We are working hard at the Jizo Foundation to try to help people to honor the grief that accompanies the loss of a baby who died either early or before birth. And we're delighted to be partnering with Destination Destiny in our mission to try to bring this grief out of the darkness and out of the silence. "'Tis a fearful thing" by Chaim Stern. "'Tis a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, to hope, to dream, to be and oh, to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, a holy thing, to love what death has touched." One of the hardest things about life is making sense of death and finding meaning in it. We struggle to understand it and to cope with its very presence in our everyday lives. Thankfully, we have rituals and beautiful cemeteries such as this one, which we can visit and tend to the graves of our beloveds, keeping their memories alive. But what about grief such as the death of a baby, a stillbirth, a miscarriage, or IVF that doesn't work? How do you memorialize someone you've never met, particularly if there's no body and no remains? 1 in every 4 pregnancies is not successful. According to UNICEF, a stillbirth occurs every 15 seconds. The number of unsuccessful IVF treatments is in the millions every year, as people struggle with fertility issues like never before. Yet we have no mechanisms or practices that acknowledge this type of loss and the very real grief that accompanies it. Hospitals often won't give remains to parents, and even if they do, many cemeteries will not inter such remains. So my question is, what happens to this unprocessed and unacknowledged grief? Where does it go if it's not given a space and a name? Humans are meaning-making creatures. We like to try to understand and see reasons and purposes for the things we encounter in life. But how can we really be expected to make sense of the death of a wanted baby? It is one of the hardest types of grief to make sense of, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't try. One of the most powerful ways to do this is through ritual and ceremony. The metaphor of ritual allows us to hold the pain and the love, as well as the sorrow and the gratitude simultaneously. So please allow me to introduce you to this beautiful figure of Jizo, a beloved and ubiquitous figure seen everywhere in Japan. According to the mythology, he protects the souls of babies that died either early or shortly after birth. And the story is that he dives into the underworld, takes the baby that has died, hidden in its cloak, and brings it directly into nirvana, thereby bypassing the suffering of existence. Early child loss is like an untold story, and it usually remains shrouded in silence and secrecy. But it doesn't have to be that way. We can learn how to hold 2 contradictory things at the same time. I was born in Ireland and raised steeped in ritual and pagan practices from both my Catholic background and the paganism that is at the heart of the Irish psyche. And I've always felt a very close connection to nature and its rhythms. Ritual is something that has always interested me, and something which I came to really appreciate at times when I wasn't part of any religious community. The need for the metaphor is something hardwired in humans. I believe in its healing power so much that I set up a company called Rituals for the Living, where I sell handmade ritual baskets, and I did my doctoral dissertation with the topic, The Cry for Ritual. I lived in Japan for several years in my 20s and grew to love many things about Japanese culture, its rituals and its practices. From cherry blossom viewing parties to tea ceremonies, The engagement with the invisible realms, which Japanese culture does, goes on a continuous basis. I founded the Jizo Foundation in March 2020 before the pandemic began. I was engaged in studying for a master's in mythology when I remembered meeting Jizo in Japan many years earlier, and I began introducing this compassionate saint to friends and clients in Southern California and Ireland. The aim of the foundation is to introduce Jizo rituals to the West and to bring this kind of unmourned grief out of the darkness and silence to which it has been consigned in the West for far too long. We've partnered with Destination Destiny, Ed Bixby, to unveil this first statue here today, November the 11th, 2023. It was handmade in Indonesia. It weighs 500 pounds and is based on a design which we did for the original grief baskets. We've identified other sites in Ireland, and we're looking to other locations in California and beyond. We're hoping that in the future we can work with many different cemeterians in this country and elsewhere to make the real space that's needed for this kind of grief and bring the loss of these little ones to the forefront and out of the darkness and silence. I'd like to invite you all now to please join me at the tree here, where we're going to hang the names of some lost loved ones and companions from our own lives.